So I must mention attribution theory. Attribution theory is the focus of the theory is explaining why certain events have occurred. You can use attribution theory when it comes to pretty much anything. Who are you blaming? Essentially, is the way it works. You can look at attribution theory in terms of relationships with other people. You can look at it in terms of many things, and oftentimes attribution theory is thrown out when you're discussing things like, faults, and kind of dissatisfaction. So, elements of attribution theory: locus, control, and stability. Locus is a judgment on who is responsible for an event. Control, the extent to which the outcome was controllable or not, right? So was it actually in your control? And then stability, the likelihood that an event will occur again. You can see if you look at each one of these pieces of attribution theory or elements that it really fits well when you're talking about retailing, and your consumer experiences with your product. And that's something to really think about if you are a marketer and a manufacturer, right? Oftentimes, again, the manufacturer and the marketer, same group of people. But if you are a marketer and a manufacturer, one thing to remember is that if you are producing band-aids, your front face people are the people who worked at CVS or Walgreens or Walmart or something like this. It's kind of at this point out of your control. Yes, you can put it on the shelf, and yes, you definitely want to make sure that you're a part of the supply line. But how do you make sure that the person who is helping someone pick band-aids or ringing someone up who's buying band-aids is kind of helping your cause? And so that's something to think about, because those are the front face of kind of issues with your product, whether it's satisfaction or dissatisfaction. So dissatisfaction, of course, is related to the element of locus, right? And causality. Who's responsible? If you feel like the retailer is responsible, if you feel like the manufacturer or the marketer is responsible, who essentially are you blaming? One thing to remember is that particular attributions seem to be linked to specific emotions, right? If you believe that the failure was controllable by the marketer, the manufacturer, the advertiser, so on and so forth, it might lead to anger, and that in and of itself may influence the type of redress sought by the consumer. So you might, as a consumer, prefer a refund as opposed to an exchange if you're angry, right? Think about that. When you go to a store and something is not right with your product, let's say you're returning it for any reason, if you're angry, oftentimes you want a refund and you're saying, I'm never buying that again, or this product and the people who make it have lied to me. You have all these kind of really angry thoughts. On the other hand, maybe you feel like the failure was uncontrollable, or you're just kind of a chillax kind of person. I don't want to say if you get angry, you're not chillax, but maybe you're a chillax kind of person, or maybe it's just kind of a chillax kind of situation, right? No need to get really upset about it. It just kind of happened. Um, and I can admit that I've had both, right? I've had issues where I get angry because something absolutely does not work correctly, and I'm like, let me just get a refund. So I'll give you an example. I bought something from Best Buy. I bought an external hard drive. I already have two, but I'm really picky about external hard drives. I've had one break with all of my information. Doesn't matter anyway. I won't go into a full story about it. But I bought this external hard drive when it was on sale. I thought it would be great. I think it was like $100 and some. It absolutely did not work. So I'm like, cool, this is fine. I'll just go and exchange it. So I go and exchange it, and it didn't work again. And at this point, they're like, oh, do you want to exchange it? And I'm like, no, I don't want an exchange. Give me my mofo money, because we're at the point where this is ridiculous, right? And I blame you. That's what happened. No, I'm kidding. I didn't really blame Best Buy. I absolutely blame the manufacturer, and I won't badmouth them, but yeah. So who complains? When we look at the demographic of complainers, who actually complains the most? Now, I should say up front that there are some discrepancies, right? So there is research that shows that higher income people complain the most. And then there's also research, though, that shows that lower income people complain the most. There's research that shows that older people complain the most, and other research that shows younger people complain the most. Single people, that actually, there's no research that says married people. It usually is single people who complain the most. There's research that shows that males complain the most, and other research that shows that females complain the most. But when we think of things that are just kind of bottom line, single people tend to complain more. People who have a high sense of justice tend to complain more, and then people who have more positive attitudes towards complaining tend to complain more. So people who think, hey, there's nothing wrong with complaining, are more likely to complain, right? Lately, we have seen this meme going around and name calling of Karen. All right, and I think what did they say? Like a middle-aged white woman who is just like a master complainer. We've seen this going around and people taking pictures and videos and so on and so forth. And I'm not exactly sure what the bottom line point of the Karen meme is. I'm wondering if it's maybe to kind of embarrass these people, or if it's just meant to inform people that this happens, or is it just to make fun of people? I'm not sure, but this is something we see now. So there you go. So when they talk about complainers, they typically say there are four types of complainers. The first are called passives. They tend to keep quiet. They don't really complain. They don't really spread negative word of mouth. They feel as if they complain, nothing will happen. So these are people who might make an offhand comment like, "Oh, this is terrible," but then they won't really share that information with other people. They won't complain to the company because they don't think anything's going to happen. So these are the kind of complainers you want. I hate to say that, but it's true. So, if you have a product that's kind of iffy, you want people that are passive. You want people that absolutely won't spread negative word of mouth. They won't go on Amazon.com and review a product that they purchased from Amazon or Walmart or anywhere else. These are the people that you want in your store if you're or in buying your product if your product is kind of iffy. All right, voicers are vociferous, meaning that they actively complain. They're less likely to spread negative word of mouth. They give companies a second chance, and that they actually believing that by complaining, companies can improve, which is interesting, right? So these are people who are complaining with good intentions, right? They want whatever issue that's there to be improved, and this can be really helpful for companies, right? So if you say, I'll give you an example. I have a dermatologist that I see because I had two little dots on my face. And then I wanted some laser hair removal, neither here nor there. But I have a dermatologist that I see, and I absolutely love her. I think she's amazing. I would totally recommend her. Problem, she has a terrible secretary. Like the person who sits in the front answers calls is awful. She doesn't always answer the phone. Actually, I've seen her when I'm in the office where she just won't answer the phone at all. She's rude on the phone, like she's rude in person, all these things. So I looked the dermatologist up because she was a referral, right? I look her up online, and every review is like, she's amazing. Her her secretary is not so great, right? So I did not do this, but I would assume if anyone complained about the secretary, they're doing it essentially to get, you know, uh, make it so that the dermatologist's office is even better than it is now, right? Not necessarily malicious complaining, but hey, let's get everything in line with you being amazing, including kind of the service that you give online. And then if that's the case, you're less likely to spread negative word of mouth. So again, I did not complain. And I didn't spread negative word of mouth about this woman, but I assume that kind of people who might have um, are less likely to spread negative word of mouth. Although, clearly there are some people who absolutely did not like the secretary and completely went online to express that. So the irates are even more vociferous, meaning that they're even more likely to complain. They spread high negative word of mouth. They speak to friends and relatives. They don't give the provider a second chance. They switch to the competition. If you have an iffy product, you really don't want these people people to buy it, I guess is what I would tell you. I also want to kind of make a comment so that people know that these things aren't mutually exclusive. You might be an irate when it comes to an expensive product or a product that you had to go out of your way to get, your time, things that you value. That you sacrifice for, you might be very passive if that's not the case, right? If, let's say, only spent $3 on it, so on and so forth. But irates are problematic if you are a retailer or a manufacturer. They don't give you a second chance. They speak to everyone about their negative experience, so on and so forth. I'll give you an example. I was at home once in Kansas City, and we were having dinner, Sunday dinner, and one of my cousins complained about Discover Card and how much she hated them, yada, yada, yada. So the thing is, I have a Discover Card, and it's a funny story because when I was in college, I got a Discover Card, and at some point I needed after my accident. So after my accident, I wasn't able to work for a while, and I still had some expenses, so I put them on the card. But I was in college, so my expenses were like dirt cheap. And I think it ended up being like $200, right? Keep this in mind, it's $200. I am paying more than the minimum every month, right? I think I'm paying like $50 to get it out. So I pay the first $50 and then I pay the second $50 and my interest is like 12%, which I hate, but whatever. And I get this card in the mail and I just want to say that I am all about my credit score. I am all about being fiscally responsible and I have been since birth. I mean, seriously. It is a personality trait. I am about my business when it comes to my money. I don't know about other people, but I know about me. I have a very high credit score. Like this is very important to me. So anyway, Discover Card sends me this letter and it says we are going to increase your rate to 25% or like 27%. I was out. I was irate. That's the least. I was very upset. I was going to use another word, but I won't. But okay, I will. I was pissed. So they say you can cancel the card if you don't, they don't explain why, they just do it, right? They tell me I can cancel the card if I don't want to continue to pay the rate, but I would still be responsible for the money owed on the card. So I get on a computer, I write this letter to Discover Card, and it was a long letter, and it was basically like, how dare you? I canceled the card, I paid it off. And at that point in time, I was really upset. Years go by, I'm out of college, so on and so forth. They send me a letter with a really good rate, so I got another Discover card. I like Discover. I like their service. I don't actually use the card that much. I don't find it very beneficial compared to my Chase Unlimited card. On the other hand, I do like their savings account. So I want to put it out there. I don't hate Discover Card, but that was a situation in my life where I was absolutely an irate customer. I didn't call and complain to the customer service people because what's the point of that? But I did write a letter. The last group of people are activists. They complain everywhere. So family, friends, third parties, people they don't know, they're on it. Um, some researchers call these people kind of market offering terrorist, right? So they are really trying to terrorize whatever market offering is under consideration, whether it's, a political campaign, whether it's, bedding that they bought from J.C. Penney's. They are actively against um, that the anyone buying those products, and they're actively on the lookout to dissuade people. Um, so the last thing I'll say about these people, they feel the consequences are positive. So they feel it's positive if you don't buy, this bedspread. They might feel it's positive if you don't support a candidate or you don't vote. These kind of things. So there are people who are activists, and we live with them every day. You probably know one, right? You probably know one who a person who absolutely hates a product. Heck, you probably are one. I mean, there's a good chance that a few of you actually are activists. So there you go. So one thing to keep in mind is that satisfaction sometimes just is not enough. 65 to 85% of customers who defect to competitors say that they were satisfied or very satisfied, right? So they weren't unhappy, they just went with a different choice. This is me all day. I can be happy with a product and still try a different product when the opportunity arises. Customer retention is key, so you really need to develop these long-term relationships. How do you do that? Well, you can care about your customers. I mentioned earlier, you can empathize with them. You can remember customers between sales. That's why you see kind of these emails, happy birthday, and all these other things. You can build trusting relationships. I think this is key to one of the things that Best Buy did to turn themselves around. Remember, for a while, Best Buy became a showroom for Amazon. People would go to Best Buy, look up the product, and then buy it online elsewhere. They decided to build these trusting relationships using expertise, right? The Geek Squad, so on and so forth, and people who were, Samsung experts or whatever in their stores. Um, and they became, more reliable according to consumers, so on and so forth. You can monitor the delivery process, right? So if there's a service and I would say a product, um, I would say also any kind of market offering, you should monitor the service, the delivery service. You should be there when needed, so service and repair, and you should provide some level of extra care, so an extra effort. So I'll give you an example. I accidentally left my credit card at a CVS yesterday. Um, and I called my credit card company and they asked me, do I want to hold the card, put it on hold just in case I find it. And I don't, because I've seen articles that say that even if you find it really rapidly, as long as it's been in public and one person has seen it, it can be problematic. So anyway, they tell me that they can bring my card, they can send my card and it will get here in 3 to 5 business days, which normally would be great, except not great. I'm leaving, going home on Sunday to help take care of my aunt who's really ill. And so I need the card before Sunday because my preference is always to put things on credit cards and then pay off the credit card. Um, so I asked, is there any way I could get the card sooner? And they said, sure, we'll expedite the shipping at no charge to you. I thought that that was extra effort, right? I didn't say why I needed it. I just said, is there any way I could get the card faster? And they worked that out for me. So I was appreciative. That said, it's a Chase credit card. And if you know anything about Chase as a company, they have real problems.
As we know, customer retention continues to be increasingly important, right? It's just easier to keep the people, the customers that you already have. These people are profitable. It's easier to try to upsell these customers, right? Try to get them to buy more, to do more business with your company. As your company expands its product line, it expands its services, it expands its just relationships with customers. It's just easier to do that with the customers you already have, which means that keeping these people and keeping them happy is important. I use this GIF. This guy just looks so serious. I just loved it, so I used it. I know it's a little distracting, but I just love it. I don't know. Okay, so reasons why customer retention is important, right? In addition to what I've already said, markets can be stagnant, right? Buyers or sellers, excuse me, buyers and sellers actually leave markets all the time. Oftentimes, it's hard to get into a market if you're a manufacturer or if you're a supplier or if you're a seller of goods, right? I don't see too many companies competing with Sam's Club or Costco. I don't see too many new car companies who are coming up to rival Ford. I mean, you could argue Tesla, and Tesla is doing very well for a car company, but it's not really evaluated as a car company. It's probably more evaluated as a tech company. And even then, Tesla is not doing the sales that Ford is doing. They just aren't, right? And Tesla has hit some real problems lately. Increase in competition. So markets are stagnant, but you do have an increase in competition in some markets. So I talked about, Costco and Sam's Club, GM and Ford. Sure, no, not too many new entrants, but in some markets there are more new entrants. And even when there aren't more new entrants, you can just have increased competition. If Ford decides to start offering more incentives, or if Ford creates a new car or something like that. On the other hand, we could think of someone like Apple, right? So Apple has been releasing new products all the time. It used to be that everyone wanted a new product from Apple. Now a lot of people are like, oh, what I want to do is keep my phone because they're so expensive. But you can see that the competitors for Apple have started creating some pretty cool phones, right? A foldable phone, better camera, so on and so forth. So there can be a lot of ways that you see an increase in competition. Rising cost of marketing. Marketing gets more expensive every time I look up, right? Not only does it cost a lot of money to employ people to be in a marketing department, the actual logistics of marketing costs a lot of money. We see a lot of companies starting to push AI in marketing. To do so, they are basically having to build their own AI systems that cost a lot of money. They're having to, partner with ChatGPT, so on and so forth, It costs a lot of money. So there are changes within the channels of distribution that can cost money. So say your supplier says, listen, we're getting steel from XY place. It's costing us $2 extra. That's $2 extra that you eat, not them. Um, or that's $2 extra that, the buyer eats and not you. Or it could be some kind of in between. It could be instead of passing the full $2 on to the buyer, you pass on $1.50, right? So it could be that, the number of steel manufacturers that you typically would buy from is shrinking, and so they have a lot more bargaining power. There are just a million reasons why you can see changes within the channels of distribution for a marketer and a buyer. And then customers have changed. Customers want a lot more. And so new customers often feel as though they have a lot more bargaining power. And they can be a bit tricky to get that contract and lock them down. And so, again, you already have a contract with Bob. It's easier to kind of keep working on Bob and working with Bob than it is to kind of go out and pursue Tammy in some cases. I want to take a minute to talk about the 20-80-30 rule, which is something that you should keep in mind as a marketer. They say that about 20% of your customers generate about 80% of your profit. If that's the case, then you need to identify who that 20% is and make sure that you're pleasing those people, right? That you're building personal relationships, that you are following through on what it is you say that you're going to do. Oftentimes, those 80% can be kind of a portion of that 80% can be at the top of your largest customers. It can be. It doesn't necessarily have to be. They say, though, that, half of your profit is lost serving the bottom 30% of your customer base, right? So serving these people can be time intensive. It can be really a profit suck for you. So make sure, again, that you're attending to the people that are most important. Not that you don't attend to the bottom 30%, but that you allocate your time correctly. And then last but not least, if a firm's goal is 15% growth, if you want to see 15% growth year over year, then you need to be at, I should say, at 95% retention rate, retaining 95% of your customers. Your acquisition rate should be about 20%. You should be acquiring about 20% new customers if you're at a 95% retention rate. If you're an 80% retention rate, you need to be acquiring new customers at about a 35% clip. So again, it goes back to this idea of it's easier to maintain the customers that you already have because it's so hard to maintain 15% growth at a 95% rate when that means essentially you have to come up with 20% a 20% acquisition rate. You need to kind of acquire 20% more customers. That is difficult, and it's very difficult as a marketer. It's difficult as a business, and oftentimes it means more labor needs to be put in, and that increases cost. Ultimately, you want to create strong customer ties. How do you do that? Right? You can add financial benefits. You can create frequency programs where, depending on how frequently they purchase your product, if you're a marketer, you have benefits associated with that. You can have club memberships, right? So they can be a part of a specific club based on their tier of purchasing, right? So your biggest purchasers can be a part of X Club, your smaller purchasers can be part of Y Club. You can add some level of social benefit, right? I said one reason that people don't defect or customers don't defect is because of it increases social benefits for them and well-being. You create these personalized relationships. You know Tammy, you know Bob, and that can kind of create these strong customer ties. You can create strong structural ties as well. Excuse me. Create long-term contracts. You can charge less for ongoing purchases, right? So once you're with me a certain number of years, you get X discount. Once you buy a certain amount of product, you get X discount. You can link the product to long-term service, right? You can say, hey, if you buy this product, you get 20 years of service in the contract. And so they're already with you. They probably are going to be less likely to switch because, they have this 20-year contract with built-in service. Now, the service could be free. You could be charging for the service, so on and so forth. But it could be in the contract and it could be beneficial.
So, how do companies or marketers increase customer satisfaction? You can use post purchase contact. You see a lot of retailers doing this. They email, they text message you. They monitor satisfaction levels of competitors' customers. I don't know if I mentioned this, but once something happened with my cell phone, I can't remember what it was, and I tweeted Sprint. I sent a tweet to Sprint. Immediately, almost me, I'm telling you, within like 30 seconds, I get a tweet from AT&T that's like, "Why don't you move over here?" It was kind of funny. Um, you can also, as a marketer or a company, formulate strategies to attract dissatisfied customers of competitors, again like AT&T and T, and their "why don't you come over here." You can advertise success of satisfying customers. So one of the things that a lot of companies do is to buy ads to show that they have high levels of customer satisfaction. We rank number one in customer satisfaction, this kind of thing. And consider the customer's role. So consider what the customer does when they go in your store. Consider what the expectation is for the customers, what customers think their expectations are, so on and so forth. So I want to go back to one of these points real quick. So advertise success of satisfying customers. You'll notice that companies tend to do this, except I'm thinking of examples of low cost uh, companies or marketers. So I'm thinking specifically in the grocery industry. I think I read an article a couple weeks back that said Aldi's is now the number one grocery store in terms of customer satisfaction. We know that Trader Joe usually makes it quite high on these lists. And yet you don't see any ads or anything touting the fact that Aldi's is now number one or Trader Joe's is high on the list because these are low or discount or kind of price conscious stores. And so they're not going to spend money doing that. They're just going to plug their money back into um, actual products and user experience. So Aldi's, for example, if I understand this correctly, has remodeled a lot of their stores to be a bit fancier, this kind of thing. So something to think about. I think it's hard to talk about satisfaction without talking about loyalty. When we talk about kind of loyalty, we can measure it many different ways, right? RFM, retention, longevity, positive word of mouth, so on and so forth. And again, as I mentioned earlier, 65 to 85% of people say, hey, I like the product, but they still switched. So you want to know what kind of influences loyalty. So I thought this was pretty interesting. This is from KPMG International, the accounting firm, 2019. Um, and when they ask consumers what keeps them loyal to their favorite product brands, people say 74% of people say quality, 54% of people say pricing. And so I think there's something to be said with that. Do you really want to completely sacrifice quality for pricing? I think the answer is no. Value for money. I think this is actually something that's overlooked. So a lot of people focus on pricing, but I actually, like a lot of people in the survey, really focus on value. Right. So I will complain about something that's $2 if I think it's if it's not worth the $2. Just like I will complain about something that's $600 if I don't think it's worth the value. And when I say complain, I mean complain in my head. Um, Product consistency. This is one of the reasons, frankly, that McDonald's is a key player, right? People love the fact that McDonald's is consistent. Is it amazing? No. Is it consistent? Yes, right? For the most part, McDonald's is pretty consistent. You could argue that maybe the fries aren't always consistent, which I think is fair. But this kind of thing. It's pretty consistent. Customer service, 56%. The shopping experience being easy, and then the selection of product assortment, the selection and product assortment. So when you're thinking about consumer loyalty, these are the kind of things that you really want to pay attention to. These often are drivers of satisfaction, which then, of course, drives loyalty.
Okay, I talked a bit about retention and why retention is important from the I would say from the supplier's side or the marketer's side. Um, from the consumer's perspective, the customer's perspective, um, staying with the same suppliers does some things, right? One, it reduces the risk. You know the supplier that you're using, and so you reduce risk by staying with them, right? If as long as they're a decent supplier, they're giving you what you need, then staying with them seems like a no-brainer to reduce risk. There are some social benefits, right? Because chances are very good that your supplier, your marketer, has built relationships with you and your team. They've built relationships with the DMU, they've built relationships with the secretary, the janitor knows them, that kind of thing. And so there's a benefit there. Those benefits can contribute to a sense of well being. One, you don't have the risk inherent of trying to find a new supplier or the kind of stress and anxiety associated with that. But you also have the benefits of having a relationship with these people, right? We know that I'm not sure if you know this, but workplace well being is decreasing quite a bit in America. People are increasingly unhappy at work, and people in general feel psychologically, physically, all of these things unwell, more so than ever before. And so maintaining relationships can be healthy. It can create efficiencies in ordering. Again, you know these people, you know what you need, they know what you need. And that's always a good thing, right? So sometimes what happens is if you are a buyer, you make mistakes in your purchase order, you make mistakes in your specifications, you make mistakes in how you're communicating information. If you're with a company, a marketer that you've had a long relationship with, they often catch those things, and they let you know. And so then the last is sharing of information. Again, you have a relationship with these people. And so, of course, they're going to share information with you. They're going to let you know that prices may be increasing soon. They're going to let you know that so and so supplier that they work with is doing XYZ. They're going to let you know any information that they have that could be important to you because they too want to maintain a relationship. From the organization's side, the benefits from retaining a customer are quite important. The profits derived from sales can be impacted by retention. So there's some differences in how people calculate this and what they say. So I'm just going to say that reducing defections can boost profits significantly, and stick with that. It can You can kind of you can increase profits or keep your profits from reduced operating cost. It costs a lot of money to go out and to get new customers, right? So they say that it's 3 to 5 times cheaper to keep a customer than to recruit a new one, right? And so you get to keep that money that you would normally spend on, frankly, marketing, because you need more marketers to go out and recruit new customers. And then you potentially could profit from referrals, right? So, one of the great things about happy customers, as long as you're keeping them happy, is that they spread positive word of mouth. And so, when they're talking to people, when they go to conferences, when they casually talk to people who are in their circle, because again, you're not dealing with Joe off the street, you're dealing with trained professionals. You're the person that's buying from you is who actually is signing the contract is a trained professional who's negotiating with you. And so they often have organizations and so on and so forth, and they stay up to date with these things. And so they can absolutely recommend you, and that can be a boost to profits.